Guadalcanal, January 1943. The jungle appears quiet, but it is a killing field. 14 American soldiers fall in 72 hours, paralyzed by unseen snipers perched nearly 90 feet up. Desperate for a solution, United States Command watches as an officer steps forward with a so-called toy rifle, and he is mocked by his own platoon. No one knows that within days, 11 of the deadliest marksmen on the island will be hunted down and shot from their treetop hideouts, reversing the tide of battle. How did a civilian rifle and the man everyone doubted break the Japanese sniper blockade? The jungle west of Point Cruz was thick with banyan trees, their roots tangled in the coral soil, their branches forming a ceiling nearly 90 feet overhead. In that canopy, silence was an illusion. 11 Japanese snipers, invisible among the leaves, turned the treetops into a fortress. Each man was perched 80 to 90 feet above the ground, camouflaged so well that even the sharpest eyes on the ground found only shifting shadows and the occasional glint of sunlight on a rifle barrel. For 72 hours, every attempt to move supplies or reinforce the front lines ended in gunfire. 14 American soldiers fell. Some struck while crawling, others while simply standing in the wrong patch of filtered light. No one could see where the shots came from. Patrols froze, pinned by the knowledge that every step might be their last. The usual tactics failed. Machine gun bursts and mortar shells vanished into the tangled green without dislodging the snipers. Even experienced officers hesitated to order another advance. The supply routes clogged with wounded, and the battalion's momentum ground to a halt. The jungle, once thought a shield, had become a death trap. The enemy's vantage point was absolute. The Americans on the ground could only wait, counting the hours and the casualties, as the Banyan Heights ruled the battlefield. John George stepped into the clearing with a rifle that drew more stares than respect. In a line of men gripping government-issue M1 Garands, his Winchester Model 70 looked out of place, bolt action, 5 rounds, a slim 2.5 times scope perched on top. It was a civilian hunting rifle, ordered from a catalog and shipped from home, the kind of weapon the Army's ordnance officers dismissed as a novelty. His captain called it a toy, and the platoon made jokes about bringing a mail-order sweetheart to a real war. The laughter faded only when George ignored the ribbing, quietly checking the action and sighting through the glass. He had reason for confidence. 4 years before the war, at just 23, he won the Illinois State Rifle Championship, grouping 5 shots into a 4-inch circle at 300 yards. To him, shooting was a matter of calculation: wind, distance, breath, and trigger. The Garand's iron sights were fast at close range, but useless for finding a sniper hidden 80 feet up in the shadows. George's rifle, with its modest magnification, could pick out the flicker of a leaf or a patch of skin against bark. That scope and the patience of a practiced hunter gave him an edge no Army manual could teach. Orders or not, he carried the Model 70 into the jungle. He wasn't there to win arguments. He was there to see what others couldn't, and to prove that a so-called toy in the right hands could change the odds. At 9:17 a.m., George settled into the ruined bunker, the Model 70 steady in his hands. The jungle's hush was broken only by distant gunfire and the low buzz of insects. He scanned the tangled canopy, searching for anything out of place. A single leaf twitching against the stillness caught his eye, movement that did not match the wind. Through the 2.5 times scope, he traced the outline of a helmet, barely visible 87 feet above the ground. One slow breath, a squeeze of the trigger, and the shot cracked through the silence. The sniper tumbled from the tree, crashing through branches to the earth below. George did not pause to celebrate. 20 minutes later, he spotted another figure, a spotter shifting position 60 yards north. Another shot, another fall. By noon, 3 more had revealed themselves, each betraying their position with the slightest flicker of movement. 5 shots, 5 kills. Each time, George cycled the bolt with practiced calm, never rushing, never wasting a round. The men who had called his rifle a toy watched in stunned silence as the body count grew. By midday, half the enemy snipers were gone. The supply line remained blocked, but the fear in the American lines began to lift. In a jungle ruled by shadows, one man with a hunting rifle had just changed the rules. At 9:57 in the morning, the quiet shattered. Mortar rounds crashed down, the first burst landing just 40 yards from George's hideout. Seconds later, the ruined bunker he had used was obliterated. He had slipped out only moments before, moving low and fast through tangled roots and coral debris. The Japanese, desperate to end the sniper hunt, had tracked his muzzle flash and sound, zeroing in with indirect fire. Staying put meant certain death. Movement was his only shield. George crawled from one patch of cover to the next, over fallen tree trunks, into shell craters, beneath thick brush, never pausing long enough for the enemy to draw a bead. Each new position brought fresh risks. The distances to target grew to 290 yards, nearly 3 football fields, with the enemy still perched high above. He studied the canopy, searching for the faintest sign, a shifting branch, a glint of steel, the unnatural stillness of a man trying not to breathe. Each shot demanded patience, calculation, and the nerve to wait for the perfect moment. By sunset, 3 more snipers had fallen, 8 in total. The Japanese had tried to turn the hunter into prey, but George's answer was movement, discipline, and a rifle that never missed. The jungle pressed in, claustrophobic and unforgiving, but the balance had shifted. The grove was no longer theirs alone. At 8:17 in the morning, George surveyed the grove with the same steady calculation that had carried him through 2 days of deadly work. Only 3 enemy snipers remained, each more cautious than the last. Below the canopy, a figure moved into a low, exposed position, almost inviting a shot. George paused, recognizing the ploy. The snipers had set a decoy to draw his fire and expose his location. He ignored the bait and shifted his scope through the tangled branches. 80 yards deeper, a subtle flicker betrayed the true threat. The master sniper hidden in the upper limbs of a banyan tree, motionless except for the faintest ripple of cloth. George made his decision. He fired first at the decoy. The shot echoed through the grove. As expected, the hidden sniper reacted. George's bolt cycled with practiced speed. A second shot cracked out and found its mark. 2 Japanese marksmen fell in less than a minute. The treetops, once alive with unseen danger, fell silent. But the muzzle flash had given him away. Japanese infantry, alerted by the shots, began closing in on his position. Mud and shattered branches offered only seconds of cover. George slipped into a shell crater half filled with rainwater, submerging himself until only his eyes and his rifle stayed above the surface. The jungle pressed close, every breath measured, every sound magnified. Japanese infantry swept past, searching for the source of the shots. One figure peered over the rim, too close for the scope, close enough to see the whites of his eyes. George fired point blank, the bolt cycling as instinct took over. He scrambled from the crater, heart pounding, 3 rounds left in the magazine. Gunfire ripped through the brush as he ran, weaving through tangled roots and broken coral. For 90 seconds, survival meant movement. No time to aim, just sprinting for the thin safety of the American lines. When he reached the perimeter, sweat and mud streaked down his face. He delivered his report in a flat voice. "Sir, the grove is clear. 17 shots fired. Not a single miss. 11 snipers and 3 infantrymen down." The so-called toy rifle had ended the sniper war. Today, military doctrine embraces adaptability over uniformity because real combat rarely fits the manual. John George's story reminds us that unconventional thinking can save lives when standard solutions fail. In a world still defined by asymmetric threats, it is the outlier who often tips the balance. What would you have done?